Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this webinar hosted by Pact. We're delighted you've joined us. We have today a fabulous agenda focused on what is the role of engaged communities to really push forward the climate agenda at the local level, particularly focused on energy. As everybody knows, next week, the COP27 opens in Sharm el-Sheikh. It's focusing very much on concrete actions to improve targets and then mobilize the financing to meet the targets. As we all know, there's often a disconnect between where the money sits and where the project sits. How can we bring them together? And added to that, how can we ensure that the communities benefit from a just transition? The COP27 in Egypt is focusing particularly on how we can all deliver a transformative adaptation agenda and just transition in global energy systems. Never more important than to refocus our attention on the role of sustainable energy and the importance of sustainable energy, as we've seen what's happened in the last couple of years. So we're going to have a great lineup for you. We've tried to be very, very practical in terms of what kind of partnerships can help to ensure that community role in a just transition towards adaptation and towards getting us those net zero results that we want to see. First of all, we're going to hear about a public-private partnership in Asia, which focuses very much on de-risking work and investments in forestry and agriculture. And I think there are very many examples there which we can learn from. Secondly, we're going to hear about Smart Power Myanmar, which is working with communities to deliver sustainable energy, cleaner energy at the community level. And thirdly, we're going to hear from a project funded by US aid in the Amazon basin, which is working with indigenous communities to build capacity to manage finance, to really embed that climate change agenda and that sustainable adaptation to sustainable energy agenda within indigenous communities as they manage the Amazon basin. So delighted that you've joined us. Hope you will ask as many questions as possible, and we can make this a very interactive event. And just to say, at Pact, we are very committed to this agenda, and particularly to ensuring that local communities are represented in every stage of the discussion, the debate, and the projects which are focused on moving forward sustainable energy. So let me hand over to Roger Mark de Souza, who is going to introduce our wonderful panel of speakers. Roger Mark, over to you.
Thank you very much, Caroline. So good to hear from you as Pact's president and CEO. Welcome, everyone. As Caroline has mentioned, we are thrilled to have a number of key partners with us here today to share some of their perspectives with a focus on how we engage communities in preparation for the discussions that would be happening at the COP next week and beyond. Really, this is to position the work and the importance of communities vis-a-vis climate change impacts and renewable energy and how we can move forward. I'm delighted that we have you with us here today, and I would ask you that if you have any questions, please be sure to put them in the Q&A. We will be monitoring your questions and would like to get to as many of them as possible. Additionally, I'm delighted that we have a simultaneous interpretation for our discussion today. today in Spanish and English. So you can go to the interpretation tab at the bottom of your screen and you can select English or Spanish if that is your preference. So welcome, bienvenidos. And I'd like to start with our first presentation, which will be in the form of a video that will share some of the results from a project that is led by Pact in Asia, as Caroline has mentioned. It's called Green Invest Asia. It's funded by USAID and has been supporting the development of LionHeart farms, which includes the introduction to impact investor beneficial returns. And this is really important to center community engagement with impact investing. Beneficial Returns has made a loan to LionHeart Farms in 2022 to fund the expansion of its production facilities. And you will be hearing more about this. LionHeart Farms is an agroforestry farm in the Philippines that is committed to sustainable farming practices of coconut palm varieties for export to developed countries. The business model supports the conservation of the ecosystem by preserving forest areas to strengthen transition areas and protect species that are considered critically endangered. LionHeart Farms has created over 1,000 jobs and will sequester 150,000 tons of CO2 this year. So with that introduction, please have a look at this short video talking about this project.
Ibang matrabawan, kaya yan ang naisipan ko po, ginapa pamuhay ko po sa mga anak ko.
Sa loob na isang linggo, kuhan lang sa 500. Kaya ito, ngayon, sabi tatay, tigilan na muna. Sabi ko, kung tigilan natin to, wala tayong anak buhay. Wala tayong mapanan ng pagkain.
Gawa namin yan sa ibon mag-akyat. Araw pa lang, ginagawa namin ng hagdanan yan. So, duhuli namin yan gabi, pati yung nanay mahuhuli. Noong 250. Ngayon sa isang puno yan mahuhuli namin. 2 yung anak. Pangatlo yung nanay. Hinuhuli kami ng 20, 25 gano'n sa isang taon.
Ako po si Residy Songdo, supervisor po ng nursery. Ang halaga po ng isang araw ko po noon dati na kinikita ay 50 pesos. Sa isang sachet ng Milo, tag-6 dati, 3 na po sila ang nag-iinom, pinapadidi. Minsan nga po sabaw na lang ng buko.
I'd love to see this investment bear long-term fruit. I think the goal for any investor should be a long game and seeing communities changed multi-generationally rather than, a pop-up that maybe, we get some jobs this season, but how about a couple of generations down for their kids, right?
LionHeart's request for this investment was to continue to scale their growth. I looked at the plan and I'm very certain that they know exactly what they're doing. It's a proven business model. And with that proven business model, scaling up only means that whatever is the impact that they have made today, that will only continue to scale and multiply. Well, it's going to make me rich in a way that is different.
If you look at your own portfolio, and if there's any part that you are not willing to talk to your children about, then go and review it. So with that, I felt maybe I should explore this space. And the moment I wired the money, something inside me changed a little. And I find myself paying more attention to the progress of the company. And I also share it with my children and let them know what this money has gone into and why am I doing this.
The objective is to see lives change, impact made. That's what this is.
I think we'd be blown away, actually, with what we discover along the way.
Nung dumating po ang LionHeart, naisip ko, hindi lang pala pinangarap ko sa mga bata ay magbasa, sumulat, okay na. Nung dumating po ang LionHeart, naisip ko na makapagtaas sila ng pag-aaral kasi may hanap buhay na permanente.
Thank you very much. So very, very insightful and inspiring video. Very much appreciating the perspective of investors and impact investing who are looking at how they can invest through a business model that would result at scale, providing short-term employment, but also looking at the multi-generational impact that can be sustained as we continue to have a focus on the just transition. So very excited to be engaged with these partners through our work in Asia, through our Green Invest USAID supported program led by Pact. I'm thrilled that we also now get to hear from our colleagues through our work in Smart Power Myanmar. Thurayne Lwin is the COO of MREF Power Company Limited, which is an energy company that works with our Pact-led Smart Power Myanmar that is working to increase rural access to electricity in Myanmar. Thurayne has been leading businesses and teams for more than 20 years in information technology, investment banking, and entrepreneurship. He works as a senior director at Thomson Reuters Market Investment and Advisory Team. And since then, and since his return to Myanmar in 2012, Thurayne has launched his own payroll processing company and an engineering service firm. So Thurayne, a warm welcome to you, and I hand the floor over to you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Thurayne Lwin. I'm with the MREF Power, and we are working in Asia, Southeast Asia region, a country called Myanmar. So hopefully today, I'm excited to share what we are doing in Myanmar, along with working together with Pact and Smart Power, and then I'll get your feedback on that. Thank you. So on this intro, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. You want me to dive into this PowerPoint, or it was just the intro earlier?
You can go into the PowerPoint, Thurayne.
Oh, okay. So thank you. So right now on this screen, what you will see is one of the solar project mini grid that we have set up in Namguen village. So that's about the hybrid, and we are about 450 kilowatts. So that was the top right screen. And then the picture you have on the left bottom is the local kids that we have trained to become a electrician, and also part of the solar maintenance farm maintenance crew. So they are also working as a lineman and doing that. The one in the middle is the actual result of what we have accomplished. We able to generate electricity, and this is a night scene where they now have a small little restaurant, and now you can see the street lights, and these establishments are able to have electricity. And on the right side is our team. These are the village kids that we are trained for the electrician and solar team, and now they graduate and they are working as a maintenance crew locally. Okay, next slide. So talking about MREF, this is Myanmar Rural Electrification Funds. Since 2018, we started this announcement microgrid project, and that's the area that in the past that was called a gray area, because it was under the different ethnic militia groups, and finally they have a truce with the government. So in 2019, we got the permission from the government, and we also got the permission from those militia group, and we chose this village, which is about maybe 200 miles away from Yangon, the capital of the Myanmar, as well as miles away from the Thai border. They were, in a way, it's a sort of and totally away from the grid. So when we talk to the government, they are about 15 to 20 years out from the master plan to get the electricity to that area. So government and our team discussed that we would like to, work this on as a pilot project to start the off-grid project. So that's the Anangkut micro project. Later on, we kind of extend our project to different locations in the Yado. The Yado project also about 250 kilowatts, and we already finished with the constructions and infrastructure there. There was another village next to Anangkut. We also finished with the infrastructure and all the cable line, transmission line there. So that's another project. And then later on, we also worked with the rubber factory in a different part of the location. That is called the 1 megawatt project. That is part of our CNI project, commercial and industry. So that's in a nutshell. That is so far what we accomplished in the last 4 or 5 years. But we hit the snag, during the COVID time. But we are able to manage and survive. So how we do these projects and how we do this impact investment in a way. So in Myanmar, we have over 135 ethnic groups, and there's about 7 major ethnic groups are there. So this location is called Cagayan State, and they are one of the key ethnic groups. But because of they are far away from the city and remote area and off-grid, they are behind the other communities. So that is the reason why we chose this Cagayan State to focus on our investment and as well as the electricity. So we consider as electricity is one of the key components of the infrastructure to do the improvement in the community. So that's how we all chip in, and this is all friends and family investment, and we started with this plus project. And then our model is more of the co-op. So whenever we start the project, we're working with the village, and then we pull all together all the village leaders and create the village association. So everybody, the owner of this solar farm that we are putting together, all the benefits are put back to the village. Okay, so and another one of the key is job creation for the team. So here is our ESG, right? So one thing is we are trying to create these microgrids and then focusing on the renewable energy. It's a step one. Once a project is running, we are kind of looking into how we can improve their livelihood and job creation and other aspects of their livelihood. So we started out with a hybrid, just a generator and solar. But right now we are we are upgrading the system into more of the, putting more battery. So we kind of, not eliminating, but reducing the diesel usage. Even right now, in the diesel use, prices are also very high in Myanmar. So it's like 5 times what we paid when we started the project. In their society perspective, we need to get community support and also making sure that the community benefit from what we do, and also there's a equal opportunity for both men and women, all ranges of ages, and do that. So that's the reason why whenever we have a project, we recruit the local kids, 18 or older. We brought them into the Yangon and then have them 1 month training, basic electrician training. And then we brought them back and work with our engineer team to have an actual, the experience, the life experience. And then once we're done with that, we kind of turn over the job to them, and they actually have a job maintaining the solar farm. On the governance side, equality and honesty are our keywords of the MREF and leader. And working with both the government and with our FNC. Next slide. So, as I mentioned earlier, these solar farms that we are creating at the community level, they are locally owned and operated. And because when we started these village associations, like I mentioned before, they are all part of the owners. So what we end up doing is, when we created the solar farm, these infrastructure, everything, distribution is part of this local association that we created. They own it right away. And then MREF is more focused on the production from the energy. So every time we produce and every month, we are selling this electricity unit to this local association at 200 chats. Let's say equivalent of, let's say, 10 cents. And then the local association send it to each household at 11 cents. So they're making that like the 1 cent. So that 1 cent kind of pay for all the salary, all the maintenance of the solar farm, the maintenance of the infrastructure. So these associations, they are all consist of the village leaders and villagers. So they are also, these committee also go by the democracy. So we have an election. So every 3 years, we have an election for their chairman, but for their committee members every year, so they can vote it out. And so they are the one kind of made the decision about how we can charge them. So, if the funding is good, they can, reduce their unit charges. Instead of charging 11 cents, they can charge it to 10.5 or so. And any funds left over, that kind of put back into the village development. So that is one of the key things that we are doing. Also, we are providing, once we got the basic electricity and everybody's working, the next thing we are looking at is how we can improve, how we can also do the sustainable for these villages. So one of the key things we are looking at is try to make sure that productive uses are increased. By doing so, we are pushing the women empowerment. Because in these ethnic groups in the faraway remote area, the gender equality is not that much there. So we are trying to bring awareness for both men and women. We just provided one training for the gender awareness. About 24 participants was there, and like 19 are women and 5 are men. And it was very interesting to see and hear how they feel, how they think, because even in those areas, the salary that they get paid is different. Even for the day labor, between men and women is different. So we want to kind of making sure that everybody treated equally and they get the equal salary for that. But most of the time, women are just doing the house chores and housework, and then men are more focused on the productive work. So we want to change the paradigm and women come into play. So we are, giving the training about how to improve yourself, like leadership skills. And also we are providing some sort of microfinance training. And recently, another training we provided, and what we end up doing is we're providing a small amount of funding to the women entrepreneurs, and then they can start the SME. By doing the SME, they also, increase the electricity, and it's a win-win for the both association. That so in this picture, on the left side, you will see in the middle one, she's the SME owner. She will do the water filtration little business for the village, and from that system, she sell the water bottle to the village and nearby villages. And then the other ones are suing with the funding that she got from the microfinance funding. She expanded her business to 4 or 5 more machines, and then she hired some local women, and this productivity increased. And then on the upper right, that is the association. That's an association for each village that we work on. We create these small electrical appliance store and selling them these villages as a bare minimum profit, so they can get these products and start using. That will also increase the use of the electricity. A lot of time, what we hear from these villages when we go there is they are totally out from those modern appliances, and they are like not only selling these products, but can you also show us using the rice cooker, how to use the iron, so that type of thing. So we are doing that, and then let me see this picture. Okay. Yeah, some of the picture here is our solar farm, and some of the training that we were providing. So we also provided some of the women for solar farm maintenance supervisor type of training. So they work with the electricians and kind of go to those maintenance projects. That is so far what we have done, and we would like to continue with the other projects.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Thurayne. I really loved hearing about the different ways that you are engaging the community, and very appreciative of the gender dimensions and sort of this division of labor between housework and productive use work, as you mentioned. Thank you very much. I'd like we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about your work in a minute. I'd like to move to our next presenter. Miguel Macedo Bravo is an esteemed anthropologist from Lima, Peru. He specializes in local participation mechanisms in the management of protected areas and in the protection of indigenous peoples in isolation. And this is very exciting for me. He works with the Instituto del Bien Común, a local Peruvian organization that collaborates with us at Pact through our USAID-funded project called Strengthening the Capacity of Indigenous Organizations in the Amazon. And this project focuses on building the organizational capacity of local organizations to secure funding and manage resources. At the Instituto, Miguel leads the data collection of social and environmental geographic information of Amazonian landscapes and works on the advocacy for land rights of indigenous peoples and local communities. Miguel, bienvenido, and I hand the floor over to you.
Hello and good morning to everybody. Thank you for the invitation. And thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here. And well, I initially asked to speak in English, but well, it's a little early here, so I think it would be better if I speak in Spanish, and if you want to understand what I'm saying in English, please use the translation in Zoom. Entonces,
well,
esta es mi...
this is
A ver. Entonces, aquí lo que les voy a hablar
what
yo
I will share with you today is details about the work we carry out at the Institute for the Common Good. We try to achieve a low carbon economy, and as Roger Marx said, my name is Miguel, I'm an anthropologist, and I'm responsible for an area called public policy and the common good. Next slide, please.
Next slide. Ok. Primero quise en esta diapositiva
In
mostrar
this slide, I wanted to include information about the actual condition and role of indigenous peoples in Peru, and with regard
los polígonos que pueden ver en color
in
amarillo.
deforestation.
Los territorios
In yellow, you can see the indigenous territories, which are called native communities in Peru. And in brown, in darker brown, you can see the areas known as indigenous reserves, which are for peoples in isolation. Here we have the Acataibo landscape, which is highly deforested. And in gray and red, you can see deforested areas. The gray areas are the oldest ones, and up to the year 2015, these areas have been most heavily and most recently deforested. This deforestation
externa, presión desde carreteras,
is caused by the construction of roads due to agriculture and activities such as wood extraction. As you can see, territories in yellow and brown are a barrier that stop deforestation from spreading. There's a highway that connects these areas with large urban centers, and this is a high-risk area. And indigenous territories clearly show their role. They are preventing deforestation from spreading, and they are protecting their areas and maintaining the forests, and also protecting carbon stocks in the area. We are part of an Amazon network called RISE, the Amazon network of socio-environmental information. This network compares what happens in indigenous territories and other areas. And this is one of the images we captured with one of our satellites. And you can clearly see how deforestation is much higher outside indigenous territories. We have deforestation rates that go from 0.4 to 0.5 in indigenous territories. Outside these areas, deforestation is clearly much higher. So in Peru, and I believe also in all the Amazon, preservation of forest carbon is really remarkable. In the case of Peru, we work mainly in two areas. In the north of Peru, as you can see the upper circle in the screen, we have the Amazon landscape. It is more or less 4 million hectares, and in the central area, there is more or less 1 million hectares. And we have the Acataibo territory and another area where we work more intensely. And here what we do is we take care of what happens in the Amazon Andes. And we do a territorial land zoning in order to produce large landscapes that include protected areas, indigenous territories, and in order to generate governance processes where and generate a sustainable low carbon economy that is significant and that includes indigenous peoples and allow them to participate more directly in the conservation of their own lands, in their own land. As you can see, we work basically at two levels. The landscapes I discussed with you previously are where we participate directly, and we use a model for management, and we also try to produce information that leads to changes in policy making, public policy making. Since 1998, we've been working at the level of these large Amazon landscapes. And as I said, we have worked on natural protected areas and indigenous territories. And we want to minimize deforestation and also the loss of carbon stocks while improving livelihoods at the local level by engaging the local communities more directly and creating this sense of ownership of the processes that take place near them. One of the most important things we do is to strengthen communities and their representative organizations so that based on their own analysis, history, and strategies, they can lead any process or initiative that has to do with improving their quality of life so that they can take up a more active role in the processes. Here we have pictures of meetings, and this is the Putumayo landscape. Next slide. So what we do at the landscape level with communities is we started with planning processes. First, we had an accompaniment process. In the case of Peru, the rights of local communities and indigenous peoples have been only partially recognized, and the process of the indigenous peoples continue to fight for their rights. The Peruvian government is more interested in productive processes, therefore it prioritizes the extraction of resources over the rights of the local communities and indigenous peoples. Therefore, once they have titles, we will have planning documents at the community level that enable them to reflect and analyze their situations so that they can propose and develop alternatives to improve their quality of life and have increasingly better access to markets and stronger capacities. So we have different aspects. We work on social, cultural, natural, political, and economic activities. We're not only interested in promoting economic activities, but what we seek to have is that our activities reflect the culture, the history of the people, and that they use their own strategies and based on their history, can improve their quality of life. The activities that are carried out are, as I said, our idea is that our activities can result in norms and policies that can in turn result in changes that improve the recognition of indigenous territories. And, you know, yes, we have norms and policies, but unfortunately not always they are enacted properly. What happens with our community work is that we have identified priorities that are, well, in fact, the communities identify their own priorities, but we believe that mainly what they feel is that they are losing their culture, language, and they want to recover them. So what we're doing is, in some cases, some communities haven't been able to recover some of their cultural values. And so what we do is help implement specific actions to that effect. And as we saw in the first slide, sometimes the pressure from the external pressures are really intense, and the communities focus on protecting their territories. And for example, when we have communities that are involved in fisheries, we have worked with them with as IBC, and with this project funded by USAID, we have been able also to include women in the activities. The communities themselves are in charge of the projects and the production strategies that are oriented to having a low carbon economy. So the IBC seeks to strengthen organizations and communities so that they themselves lead these processes. But what we have often see is that have seen in Peru is that many NGOs from the outside would come and propose them what to do instead of all the way around. So what we are proposing is, what we're doing is that the communities themselves impose the conditions to outsiders and tell them this is the way we want to work. And in last, they use their traditional knowledge and cultural values to improve their quality of life, but seeking to achieve a balance between the forest and their culture so that in the future they can have processes that are more sustainable. Next, please. Our achievements so far, in the case of Peru, native communities are small. We have more than 2,000. In general, as IBC, our contribution has been that we have developed more than 70 life plans. We have accompanied their fishing forestry activities. Also, we have accompanied artisans, and we have supported the strengthening of artisan organizations, improving the quality of their products. And we have also worked with artisans that are more specialized. We are now seeking to formalize the organizations that didn't have a formal recognition from the state, and now they are becoming more commercialized. Another important thing is that we have permanent work to support the strengthening of indigenous organizations. We have strengthened about 15 local organizations in the landscapes we've been focusing, and we also have a complete register of peasant and native communities in Peru. In 2016, we started, but with the pandemic, we had some delays, and this register of the indigenous territories is quite it's not as updated as it should be, because the government is more interested in companies that are, or communities that are involved in extractive activities. So lastly, we have also been able to generate updated information on pressures and threats throughout this area. This also deforestation, carbon loss, both at the individual and at the international network level. We have worked on this. We now have a project, a carbon project, under which we are producing updated information about carbon stock losses, and so that this information can be taken to events such as the COP. And this information is useful to develop advocacy activities that have impact at the national, regional, and international level, and promote the conservation of indigenous territories. Thank you very much. And this is my email in case you want to contact me.
Gracias, Miguel. Qué interesante ver ese mapa al principio que nos permite ver el importante, el impacto de la deforestación y el rol
It's very important to see the impact.
If we can have Thurayne join us now with Miguel. We're monitoring the questions in the chat to see if you can, if there are any questions you'd like to raise. We will share Miguel's email address. I know there's a request for that, and we will be sharing the recording of the session. So if I may ask you, Miguel and Thurayne, to join me on camera so we could chat a little bit about some of the key issues that you have raised. So thank you very much again, Thurayne and Miguel. And Miguel, thanks for putting your email address in the chat. And I wanted to ask you, I was very interested to see both of you talk about the different ways that you engage communities and this whole centrality of community engagement as we think about a just transition. I wonder if you could get to one of the issues that Caroline mentioned, which is the financing gap. This is such a critical issue. What are your thoughts on and reactions about how we can continue to engage with communities to bridge the financing gap for a just transition? So community engagement, financing, and a just transition. What are the connections there for you, and how can we address this gap? Thurayne, would you like to start? And you might be on mute. There you go.
Yeah, I was having technical difficulties, so didn't hear your question. Would you mind repeating that?
So looking at ways that you can engage communities and the financing gap for the just transition. So how could we engage communities to mobilize additional financing towards a just transition?
That's a good question. Yeah, from the financing perspective, you are talking about actual impact investment, or you are talking about the beneficiary side of it?
I think both would be important.
Okay. So yeah, right now, for the investor perspective, it's a difficult time because we have a lot of projects planned out, and when the COVID hits, that kind of put a stop on some of the investors to put the fundings in. And then currently also in Myanmar, there was the military coup happened. So it's kind of like, most of our projects are kind of for the pause right now. But even that, we are still trying to work with right now with the Smart Power and other companies to, see what we can do with, the difficult time. So one of the main things that we are trying to focus is making sure that our current projects are still operational and running, right? That's the first one. And also making sure that some of those additional, microfinance and stuff that we have provided to these villagers and SMEs, they are still able to run their businesses, still have an income. So we are, that's a gateway. We are trying to see what sort of investment, what sort of, know-how. So we are trying to engage with the various organizations to bring in those additional funding right now.
Great, thank you, Thurayne. Miguel.
Sí, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. What I believe the answer to your question is twofold. The importance of engaging the communities themselves in these processes, that the communities and organizations themselves propose alternative actions. In fact, any outside initiative has a more extractivist and less sustainable vision. They have lived in the forest for thousands of years, and they are the best to establish how to decide how the lines of work. So what we have done so far is to building organizational capacity so that whenever they get the funding, they can also multiply the funding they receive and work in a fairer and better organized way. Yes, we move forward and then backward. And as Thurayne said, the situation is complicated. The pandemic has just ended, and the political situation in Peru is also complicated. But when we talk about strengthening capacity, we need to remember that it's important that the communities have to talk about their own initiatives so that in the long term, we have more justice and a better balance, and that we have a low carbon economy. And it's good for everybody. Can we talk a little bit more about other challenges you have and what other opportunities you have so that we can see
some additional challenges and opportunities to address these challenges? So, Miguel, could we start with you this time? Challenges and opportunities as you move forward.
oportunidades? Yes, our challenges are many. We have political instability, a context of many inequalities, many difficulties faced by communities to reach donors to make their voices heard. We have politicians and government officials that change constantly, beyond the problem, apart from having a leftist president or, the rights of the communities are not being addressed in general. There are no, the communities have less schooling than others, and they have poor access to the internet. So securing their rights is going to be very difficult. So we've been working on this, and the opportunities I can see is that the communities are very interested in working, and they have capacity for organizing and to get organized as well. And these processes, their processes, nowadays they feel more able to make their voices heard. And in addition to all the initiatives that have to do with climate change at the national and international level, I think the Peruvian government would prefer, not to have signed all these international treaties, but unfortunately for the government, it is under the obligation to comply with its obligations, international obligations. Now we have international indigenous organizations that are strong and that are heard outside Peru, and local organizations and communities themselves. We can now speak the same language and understand better what's happening, and 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 have better conversations with representatives. So
Any quick thoughts on opportunities as we move forward? Thurayne, over to you. Yes.
Oh, okay, great. So challenges, yeah, same thing as Miguel said. We have not only the pandemic now, we have a political situation because of during the coup right now, we have a lot of fighting going on, so that is unavoidable. We are hoping that the peace will be restored, especially the villages. Some of the villages are burned down and stuff like that. So right now, another challenge we have is transportation. Even reaching out to these villages is very difficult. So sending my staff or sending the maintenance crew to go in there, we need a lot of permission. Need to apply permit to go through all the checkpoints to get there. So right now the checkpoints are not only from the military but also from the ethnic militia group to get permission to get there. So very difficult. Now banking situation also dire in Myanmar. So you can transfer money, you can do any other means of money transfer, and also like to withdraw your money from the bank, you are actually paying about roughly about 6 or 7% to withdraw. To each time you withdraw money, you pay the kind of cash to do that fees, but to pay that. So these are the difficulties that we are facing. Also, the price of any diesel or anything that we want to send to village, they are very high. So they are kind of isolated right now. All the villagers are. So another thing in the future, and the opportunity we can have is hopefully like USAID or like WWF in the past that we are working. They are providing funding right now. They are still operating some of the INGOs in Myanmar. So with that, they are originally they want to do funding for the environmental or energy sector, but because of due to this COVID and military situation change, they kind of diverting some of the funds to sort of like a community development as well as funding into this SME startup. So we are hoping that will kind of grow and see the opportunity to introduce our community.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Thurayne and Miguel. So as we wrap up today's session, just to point out that we've heard from our colleagues and our partners, really the centrality, the importance of engaged communities as we move forward. We've heard examples of training, engagement, locally owned processes, addressing gender equality, territorial planning, governance, all key dimensions of community engagement. We've also had a discussion about how we get to scale and impact and what it means for being conscious of operating at scale. We saw a very powerful map from Miguel. We heard of ways that we continue to build long-term investments through impact investment opportunities. And finally, as we think of a just transition, how can we have that impact through organizational regional development, capacity building, engagement with the community level, indigenous voices, knowledge, and building their, in partnership with them, their capacity to build their organizations. So once again, thank you to Thurayne and Miguel. We so value our partnership and collaboration with you. Thank you for giving us your time today. We will be sharing the presentation and the recording with our colleagues and participants. Thanks so much for joining us today for this important discussion about engaging communities for a just transition as we move forward to the COP next week and beyond. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.